What's up, everybody? I am your host, a crazy religious woman who thinks everything is a sin and is hated by the whole town. And that is my co-host, a blood-drenched prom queen with a sudden taste for revenge. And welcome to the Grindhouse Syndicate, where we are in week 3 of Fan Appreciation Month, where you guys get to pick the movies that we cover. And today, we are talking about one of the most legendary horror films ever made, Brian De Palma's Carrie from 1976. And this movie was picked by Nikki Loftus, who actually sent us an email about 10 or so months ago, asking if we could cover the original Carrie for her birthday, which was May 18th. And I believe this episode comes out on May 19th. So we added it to our board where it sat there for almost a year, but we didn't forget it. We managed to remember, and we just want to say happy birthday, Nikki, and thank you for submitting this awesome request.
Happy birthday.
Yep, we're a day late. Well, technically not. Technically, as we're recording this, yeah, but when she hears it, we'll be a day late. Another bit of news to share with you. We just finished our interview with C. Ernst Harth for our 13 Ghost episode. And let me tell you, what a blast. It was such a good time talking to someone who has such a diverse career, played some really memorable characters, and gave us some awesome behind-the-scenes info on the movie. We also talked about a bunch of other stuff he was in, like the X-Files and Trick or Treat, and you guys are going to get a chance to hear it all because we got it all on video, and we will be releasing that in a few weeks. And if you want to win a free autographed photo of the man himself, all you got to do is head to his Facebook page or Instagram, give him a like or follow, and shoot us a message so we can put your name in the hat. He's got a bunch of prints that you can pick from. There is a 13 Ghosts one, the show Supernatural, Trick or Treat, the X-Files, a bunch of good stuff. He actually sent us a thing that we can post with all of the different photos that you can get autographed. So definitely do that, because we love giving away free shit to you guys.
Yep, I have to throw in some stickers.
Yeah,
have to put together a little package for the winners too.
Little package to win.
We got 2 winners.
Yeah, and I mean it's pretty easy. All you got to do is go click a like button or a follow button, and send us an email, says you did it, and there you go. You could get some free shit.
Send us an email, message on Facebook. If you're a YouTube listener, drop a comment.
Yeah,
just something to let us know. We check them all. We'll throw everybody's name in the hat, and we'll pick 2 winners from that.
Yep. So, with that being said, are you ready to dive into Carrie, 1976?
I am definitely ready.
All right, let's do it.
Hello, boys and ghouls. If you want to stay up to date on what's going on with the show, talk about or submit your movie requests, or just say die, then I got good news for you. You can always find us at one of our social media accounts or our official website at Grindhouse.Horror.Pod.com, Facecrook at the Grindhouse Syndicate Horror Podcast, Instascam at grindhousesyndicate.horror.pod, and many gore, which you can always find links for in the show notes as always. And you know what I always say, the morgue, the merrier. So please subscribe or follow for alerts on new episodes. Now, back to the show, kiddies. Frights, camera, action.
And if you really love us and don't want our nice pink dress to get covered in pig's blood, give us a review. Carrie is a 1976 American supernatural horror film directed by Brian De Palma from a screenplay written by Lawrence D. Cohen adapted from Stephen King's 1974 novel. The story is about a shy teenage girl who is constantly mocked and bullied at her school when she later develops the power of telekinesis and uses it to wreak vengeance on her tormentors. It stars Sissy Spacek, Amy Irvin, PJ Souls, and John Travolta. It was produced by Red Bank Films. It had a budget of $1.8 million and a box office of $33.8 million. Quite a return.
That is a good return.
The film was based on King's first ever published novel from 1974. De Palma was intrigued by the story and pushed for the studio's permission to direct, while Spacek was encouraged by her husband to audition. During an interview in 2010, King said that he was 26 years old at the time and was paid just $2,500 for the film rights. Brian De Palma said in an interview in 1977, "I read the book. It was suggested to me by a writer friend of mine. A writer friend of his, Stephen King, had written it. I guess this was almost 2 years ago. I liked it a lot and proceeded to call my agent to find out who owned it. I found out that nobody had bought it yet and a lot of studios were considering it. So I called around to some of the people I knew and said it was a terrific book and I'm very interested in doing it." Filming started on March 1st in 1976 at Santa Paula, California, where the White residence was located. Most interiors were constructed on a sound stage in Culver City, California, with exterior sets being shot at Palisades Charter High School. The final scene, in which Sue reaches towards Carrie's grave, was shot backwards to give it a dreamlike quality. This scene was inspired by the final scene in Deliverance, and rather than let a stunt double perform the scene underground, Spacek insisted on using her own hand in the scene, so she was positioned under the rocks and gravel. They actually buried her alive for that scene.
That's fucking dedication.
It is dedication because Brian De Palma tried to talk her out of it, and she was like, no. One thing I did find out in the research here is Sissy Spacek really was dedicated to this role, and a lot of the things that we see in the movie with Carrie was from her idea. Yeah. The film opened November 3rd of 1976 in 17 theaters in Washington, D.C. in the Baltimore area. 2 days later, it opened in 9 theaters in Chicago, then opened in 53 theaters in New York City on November 16th and L.A. on November 17th, where it received widespread critical acclaim and was cited as one of the best films of the year. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times stated that the film was an absolutely spellbinding horror movie, as well as an observant human portrait, giving 3.5 stars out of 4. That's surprising coming from him.
I don't know, man. This gives me the vibes of a horror movie he would like.
Yeah, but he
More
typically
that, like,
hates almost all horror movies.
Yeah, I feel like more so on the psychological side. This is like heavy on the score. It's not so much on the gore.
No,
You
yeah,
know,
I
there's
agree.
like gore and awesome practical effects and stuff. He's not much for the murder porn, or gore porn, whatever the fuck they call it.
So Carrie is one of the few horror films to be nominated for multiple Academy Awards. Spacek and Laurie received nominations for Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress awards, respectively. The film also won the grand prize at the Alvarez Fantastic Film Festival, and Spacek was given the Best Actress award by the National Society of Film Critics. In 2008, Carrie was ranked number 86 on Empire's list of the 500 greatest movies of all time, and number 46 on the American Film Institute's list of 100 greatest cinema thrills. Since then, it has spawned a sequel releasing in 1999. That is a long time for a sequel.
That's a good gap,
Yeah.
for sure.
A television film from 2002, a remake from 2013, a stage production in 1988, and a soon-to-be Amazon Prime retelling produced by Mike Flanagan. The film has had many physical releases, but the most notable ones are the Scream Factory 2-disc Collector's Edition with a new 4K scan released in 2016 and a limited Collector's Edition Blu-ray of 5,000 copies from Arrow Films, providing the definitive release of the movie containing a new 4K restoration with new special features and a 60-page limited edition booklet featuring new writing on the film by author Neil Mitchell, alongside reversible artwork, posters, and art cards, which was released in December of 2017. I would like to get that Arrow box set.
Yeah, that'd be a cool release to get your hands on, especially if you're a collector of physical media. I have a feeling that finding one unopened, though, with all the stuff with it, if there was only 5,000, probably pretty difficult.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so ratings. This thing is got some damn good ratings. Rotten Tom gave it a 94%. As high.
That is
one of the highest, if not the highest, we've had on the show.
Yeah, that's up there.
IMDb gave it a 7.4 out of 10. Letterboxd gave it a 3.9 out of 5. That's probably the highest Letterboxd we've had. And the Google average audience rating is a 4.3 out of 5. I don't know what it is with Letterboxd. I've never seen a movie get like a 4.5 or a 5.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, we just stop reading their ratings. There seem to be always like some just negative Nancy's on there.
There's a lot of kind of film critiquing type people on there.
Yeah, but this is the type of horror movie that those people like. Like I said, like Rotten Tomatoes or Roger Ebert didn't surprise me. Because this movie kind of rides the line of horror. You know, it is a horror movie, but it's one of those horror movies that non-horror movie fans can watch and enjoy, and it be a good movie. Like, it's a good movie overall, not just in the aspect of horror. It definitely has horror elements to it, but it's not purely a horror movie.
Yeah. If you would like to watch this movie, you can currently find it streaming on HBO Max or for rent on Apple TV, Fandango, and Google Play for $3.99. Are you ready to dive into the plot of Carrie?
I am ready.
All right, let's do it. So we start out seeing an overhead shot of a bunch of girls playing volleyball in gym class, and we see the camera slowly start zooming into a shy, non-athletic girl in the back with long red hair. And this is our main character, Carrie White, who, as we are about to see, is very unpopular with the other girls in her school. And after a bunch of shouting from the other girls playing the game, we then see the ball come flying at Carrie, where she awkwardly goes to hit it, where it bounces off the side of her arm, causing the ball to go out of bounds and her team to lose the game. After that, we then hear the gym teacher blow her whistle, signaling for everyone to head inside, and as all the girls walk past her, they either hurl an insult or physically hit her with their hats. We then get the title card and some music as we head into the girls' locker room, where we see a lot of boobs.
Lots of boobs, man. Yep. High school female locker room in the 70s, full of
boobs.
Full of naked 25 to 30-year-old women.
It's
weird
true.
How that works, man. What a place to be.
The camera then slowly pans past all of these girls who are getting dressed, when we then start to zoom into Carrie again, who is really enjoying her shower.
Yeah, she is enjoying it a lot more than you would think somebody would normally enjoy a shower in the middle school.
She's really feeling herself in this moment. So as we watch Carrie, essentially soap her body down, we see her hands begin rubbing a bar of soap on her inner thighs when suddenly she notices the tips of her fingers are soaked with blood. As Carrie stares at her hand for a moment in shock, she then begins panicking as she then quickly runs out of the shower and over to the girls, showing them the blood and begging for help. She's acting like she just got shot.
Yeah, I'm not much for bullying, but I will say, why in the fuck would you think it was a good idea to rub your bloody hand on somebody? like, even if you did get shot, she, like, runs up,
Yeah.
like, and reaches out and grabs this girl with her bloody hand, and, it's a very strange reaction.
Very strange.
I always think, like, that very sensual shower scene before the blood comes, like, when you first told me that her husband was the one who wanted her to do this movie. I wonder how he felt whenever this scene was getting shot.
Well, he actually, I believe he was the art director of this movie. Yeah, he was on set.
Maybe he's into that.
Maybe. So as Carrie runs over and starts grabbing everyone's clothes with her uterus blood, the other girls kind of freak out and push her away.
Her cooter blood,
Yeah.
good God.
We then see some of the other girls run over where they begin teasing Carrie and throwing tampons at her. They end up backing her into the shower area where she kind of just sinks down to the floor and begins crying. And now with the whole gym class chanting, "Plug it up."
The old red dread.
As they're chanting this at the frightened teenager, the female gym teacher comes running out of her office to see what the hell is going on. And when she sees what is happening, she gets pissed. She ends up screaming at the girls until they all shut up, where she then tries to help Carrie up off the floor. But Carrie is so hysterical, she can't control herself. The teacher then slaps her across the face, hoping that it will get her to snap out of it. But this only causes Carrie to push her away, where we then see an overhead light explode above them. So after things calm down a little bit, the teacher, whose name is Mrs. Collins, confronts Carrie, where she says that she is going to explain everything. So essentially, what just happened here is Carrie just got her first period, and unfortunately for her, her mother is this like obsessive religious fanatic and never talked to her about like sex or puberty.
Or the old basement blood.
Yeah, so when she saw the blood, she had no idea what was going on.
It's that Red Dead Redemption.
Also, if you have never seen or read Carrie, then I will go ahead and kind of fill you in. The light exploded because now that Carrie has entered womanhood, she is also gaining the power of telekinesis, but she can't quite control it yet. So we then jump to about 30 minutes later where we see Miss Collins talking with the principal about what just happened. And he's pretty dumbfounded that a high school girl doesn't know anything about puberty. I love how like weirded out he gets over Carrie's blood on the teacher's shorts. Like he's like, "Ugh, get away."
That's kind of every guy's reaction.
I mean, like, I wouldn't, because he physically kind of scoots away from her when she's standing there talking to him. Like, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't do that. But I mean, I would be like, "This is a child. You know, you're a principal. This is a child. Vagina blood. Yeah. Yeah, get away.
By the way,
Change your shorts, please."
Is he fucking her name up on purpose?
I don't know, man. That's what I put. I said, "God damn, is he retarded?"
It's like like there'll be people that'll do that just to be a dick, like show you're not important. And despite the fact that the teacher keeps continuously correcting him, he still keeps calling her Cassie. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, I don't get that because he almost seems like, he's being nice about it. He's understanding.
Yeah.
He's like, take the rest of the day, you don't have to worry about going to gym class for the rest of the week, whatever. Even whenever she's complaining about the parents, she's like, "Look, we can't dictate how people parent their children. It's not our business." But then he turns around and keeps fucking her name up.
Yeah.
Like 4 times after being corrected.
Yeah. It's just like, it almost seems like it's on purpose, but I can't figure out why he would be doing it. So when she comes in, he doesn't really know what to say. So he pretty much tells her that he's sorry about what happened. She can go home for the day and, use the time to get herself together. Carrie doesn't say much at first, but we can tell that she's getting aggravated by him repeatedly calling her Cassie until she finally cracks and she yells that her name is Carrie as we then see the ashtray on his desk go flying into the air. So, a couple things. One, it was wild to see the ashtray, and then at one point in time, the gym teacher smoking a cigarette in the principal's office. That was weird. And two, did you happen to catch the name of the school?
I did not.
This is Bates High School, which is an ode to Psycho, and you will notice throughout the film that Psycho's violin music is in this movie a bunch.
Did
Yeah.
not notice. I did take very close notice to the score, because that was one
Yeah.
thing that stuck out a lot to me, but I did not connect it to the same notes as Psycho.
Yeah, I couldn't get an exact detail information about that, but basically, so Brian De Palma loves the movie Psycho, and he wanted to use the music from Psycho in this movie, and apparently he just did it. Didn't get permit. I don't know if there's no, copyright or something. I don't know. I couldn't get the
It's
details
like
of
you
it,
can't copyright it E sharp.
but he just apparently just said, "I'm putting it in," and nobody did anything about it. So this next part is fucking great and is totally what I would do if I had these powers. So we then cut to her walking home when we see a kid riding towards her on a bike. And after the kid passes by, he then turns around and he heads back for Carrie. And as he passes her, he yells, "Creepy Carrie, creepy Carrie." Now, this obviously pisses her off as the camera zooms into her eyes, and we then see the kid just eat shit in someone's front yard as his bike gets shoved by some invisible force.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
That's how you use telekinesis.
Yeah.
For good.
Yeah. Fuck that kid.
Uh-huh.
Little bastard. Little shithead. So next we cut to Carrie's mother arriving at the Snell residence, where an older woman opens the door and greets her. This lady is Sue Snell's mom, and Sue is one of the girls we seen fucking with Carrie earlier in the day. And she is also going to be one of our main characters, Sue Snell. By the way, did this woman look familiar?
Her mom?
Yeah.
Sue's mom?
Yeah.
No, nothing stood out.
So she's the head doctor bitch from Dream Warriors. Yeah. And her and Amy Irving, who plays Sue, are real life mother and daughter. Wild, huh?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So when Mrs. Snell opens the door and sees it's Carrie's mom, she's like, fuck. Not this
God
bitch.
Damn it. Here we get some more Jesus talk.
Yeah. So
get my purse out so I can pay her to leave.
So we, throughout the movie, we have been finding out that Mrs. White has a reputation in town for being a bit of a rude, fire and brimstone church nut. And everyone's like, they try just to not deal with her because she's such a pain in the ass. So Miss Snell invites her in, and she's asking how she's doing. And we see that Mrs. White has come here to pass out flyers for her church and raise some money. Now, Mrs. Snell wants to get rid of this bitch as fast as possible, so she just donates $10.
Yeah. Mrs. White was the main thought process behind Ring doorbell cameras.
I thought you were going to say
they were invented.
I thought you were going to say what's her name? Mrs.
Murder?
No, Mrs. Normandy from The Mist. Very similar.
Yeah.
So we then see Miss White head home where Carrie is already at, and as soon as she walks in the door, the phone rings. And as she answers it, we see a very worried Carrie standing at the top of the steps attempting to listen. After the call ends, Carrie heads down to talk to her mother, where Mrs. White tells her that it was the school and they told her what happened. Carrie then busts out in sobs, asking her mother why she never told her about menstrual cycles, I guess.
Basement blood.
And Mrs. White responds by backhanding the shit out of Carrie with a Bible. And as Carrie hits the ground, her mother begins reading a passage about sin. And it's very obvious as she reads this that this is a sex is really bad kind of thing, and orgasms are the devil. So she just got backhanded by a Bible.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's what they were made for. Beating people who didn't believe the same things as you.
So one thing I've actually never picked up on before until this watch is when Carrie's mom starts praying for her, she says that Carrie must have sinned because if she would have stayed like pure or whatever, then she would have never got her period.
Yeah. Yeah,
What?
yeah, yeah. That's completely. So she thinks that, although the Bible says that all women will, because of Eve, will suffer the
Yeah.
consequences of menstrual bleeding, blood, whatever you want to call it, and childbirth, that if she stayed completely pure and never had a bad thought, as if that's possible,
It just would never
she
happened.
would have just never turned into a woman.
Yeah.
She would have stayed a child.
Stayed a child forever.
You think Trump was like, damn, that's a solid Bible. I could sell that.
So Mrs. White, her prayer group takes a turn for the worst here, and she grabs Carrie by the hair and drags her to the kitchen, where she forcefully shoves her daughter into a dark small closet, slamming the door. Now, when Carrie gets locked in here, she loses her fucking mind as she begins screaming and banging on the door, begging to be let out. We also see that half of the closet has been decorated with some kind of like a religious shrine with the creepiest looking Jesus I have ever seen.
The scariest thing in this movie is this creepy Jesus statue's eyes.
It looks like a zombie Jesus.
I don't know what the eyes almost were like glowing.
Well, yeah. So he's got like all these arrows sticking out of him and a bunch of like blood pouring out of his side. And when she lights this little candle, like his eyes light up with fire or something.
It's like they just glow. They're super white. And it's almost looks like Jesus died and somebody painted a fake eyes on his eyelids after he closed his eyes. Really creepy.
Also, the face of this little Jesus looks like Alice Cooper. I'll just say that.
Alice Cooper. Jesus Cooper.
Yeah.
Alice Christ.
So once
one thing you can tell though that is important to the movie about this is this closet is clearly made up like this. This is her punishment room.
Yep. This is
like
where
anytime she does anything bad, this is clearly where her mom puts her
to repent.
To repent her sins that she did not actually sin.
So once Carrie realizes she's not getting out anytime soon, she begins to pray to God for forgiveness. And after hours of this, her mom finally unlocks the door, allowing her to come out, where she is immediately told to go to bed. Carrie then quickly apologizes to her mother for earlier and rushes up the stairs. But when she makes it to her room, we see that she is very distraught as she stands in front of her mirror and screams while pulling out her own hair. We then get some awesome psycho violins as Carrie accidentally activates her powers, shattering her mirror. So the next day, we see Carrie back at school where she is just sitting quietly in class as a teacher walks around the room, reading these students' poems that they turned in. And when he finishes reading this particular poem, we find out that it was written by a popular guy named Tommy Ross, who is the boyfriend of popular girl Sue Snell, which is one of the girls we saw fucking with Carrie in the locker room. So this Orville Redenbacher looking motherfucker starts talking shit about Tommy's poem, telling him it kind of sucks and he isn't as good at writing poetry as he is playing football. When suddenly Carrie speaks up and says that it's beautiful, causing the whole class to burst out in laughter. So after she says this teacher starts making fun of her for it, and as he is doing this, we see Tommy kind of low-key take up for her by saying, "You suck." So after this, we then jump back to gym class where Mrs. Collins makes all of the girls line up as she begins treating them like shit for what they did to Carrie. And this is where we meet some of our main characters of the story. First, we have Sue Snell, who, despite her joining in on the torment the day before, is actually a pretty decent girl. As a matter of fact, she is the only one that actually feels bad for what they did but genuinely wants to help Carrie be more sociable. Next, we have Chris Hargensen, who is the absolute worst bitch in the whole school. We see that she is entitled, spoiled, demanding, and thinks the rules shouldn't apply to her because she is pretty and popular. All right, so we also have Norma Watson, who is played by PJ Souls, who is kind of your fun-loving, high-energy, popular girl who's like really into sports. Which, by the way, John Carpenter seen PJ Souls in this movie and thought she would be perfect for his next movie, Halloween.
Yeah.
Next, we have Helen, who she's kind of like the nerd of the bunch, I guess. We don't really have a lot of information on her. So there are some other girls, but they're mostly just like background and side characters that just really aren't that important to the story.
It's like 8 of them in total, I think, 8 or 10.
So back to this lineup. So Miss Collins gets them all in a lineup, and Chris is back there not paying attention to her, and she's like blowing these fucking big bubbles with bubble gum. So she immediately walks over and gets in her face and tells her to spit out the gum. And Chris responds with a sarcastic comment, "Where should I put it?" And she responds like a fucking boss as she says, "You can choke on it for all I care, just get it out of your mouth." To which Chris quickly goes to remove the gum. So now that Mrs. Collins has all of their attention, she starts telling them how what they did yesterday to Carrie was super shitty and they only care about themselves, boys, and the prom. And then she kind of low-key calls Chris like the whore of the school, which is great.
Fucking slut.
Yep. So she starts reading these bitches to filth, and then she tells them that if it were up to her, they would all get 3-day suspension and no prom. And we literally hear these girls gasp. Like, they're just like, oh God, no prom. Like, this is like the worst case scenario for them.
The gasp is real.
Yep. But lucky for them, it wasn't up to her, and the principal decided that they would all have 1 week detention for the stunt that they pulled on Carrie. Unfortunately, though, it's 1 week detention with Mrs. Collins, and she plans on making them do some serious physical fitness.
Just putting them through basic training.
Very much.
You want to get those bitches in shape, man, you put them in the plank. Plank them. Enough with those fucking jumping jacks.
Now, needless to say, the girls aren't happy about this, but are still relieved about the whole prom thing. Chris then says out loud that she just won't come to the detention, and Miss Collins smiles real big and says, "That's okay, because if you skip my detention, the punishment is 3-day suspension and no prom." And of course, Chris shuts the fuck up. We then cut to the girls wearing their 70s athletic outfits as we see Mrs. Collins counting off some jumping jacks. After that, she immediately makes them go into some squats, then sit-ups and push-ups, and finally some running in place. And while they are doing this last exercise, we see Chris start bitching about Miss Collins to Sue. And Sue, who totally thinks they deserve what they are getting, basically tells Chris to shut up and let it go. But Chris just can't, because she suffers from a disease called being a cunt.
It's cuntitis.
Yep,
is
cuntitis.
The actual medical term for it.
She then tells Sue that she's not going to let Miss Collins get away with this as she stops running and aggressively walks towards her. The teacher then tells her to get back in formation and continue running, but Chris tells her no, she's done, and Miss Collins says that she's still got 10 more minutes left. And Chris makes a huge mistake as she tells her to stick those 10 minutes up her ass. And before she can even finish the sentence, Miss Collins rushes over and smacks the ever-loving shit out of that bitch.
Fuck yeah.
I said fuck yeah. That is what I'm talking about.
Fucking Rick James, her fucking ass.
I bet you teachers all over the world felt that in their bones.
Yeah. You know, as a teacher, like any teacher that teaches high school has felt that at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Like, been like, God, if I could just smack the ever-living fucking shit out of this kid.
Yep.
As bad as that sounds.
Interesting fact, this was a real slap, and they had to do the scene in 30 takes, which
30 takes?
Yeah, so she got slapped in the face 30 different times.
Good God.
Yeah.
Must not have been that hard of a smack.
Yeah.
You'd think after 30 smacks, her fucking face would be swole.
Yeah. So after the slap heard around the world, Chris immediately folds like a lawn chair as she begins crying hysterically, telling Miss Collins that she can't do that to her and she's going to get fired for this. Miss Collins isn't at all fazed by this as she grabs Chris's shirt, jacks her up into the air, and tells her if she says one more word, she's going to knock her down. This bitch is about to have a near-death experience.
She's like, bitch, I am just a fucking gym teacher. Do you know how much I'm getting paid? Do you think I care if I lose this job?
Yeah, she's literally like, she grabs her, like almost lifts her up by her shirt and is like, if you say one more word, I'm going to put you on the fucking ground.
Like,
I love it.
My husband makes 6 figures, bitch. You think I'm scared to smack the shit out of you, lose this stupid job?
So a frightened Chris then breaks away from Miss Collins' grip as she turns around and says to the other girls, she can't get away with this if we all stick together. But unfortunately for her, nobody backs her up, with Sue even telling her to just shut up as they all go back to running in place. Chris then takes off, demon mad, as she walks past Miss Collins and says this isn't over by a long shot, and as she storms off the athletic field in this dramatic fashion, Miss Collins tells her, no prom for you. After all that excitement, we then catch up with Carrie, who is in the library looking at books about miracles to try and possibly explain her new powers. And as she heads down the rabbit hole of the Dewey Decimal System, she ends up finding a book called The Secret Science Behind Miracles. And upon opening the book and skimming through it, she comes across the definition for telekinesis, which, just in case you don't know, means you can move shit with your mind, which is a gift that Carrie is now discovering that she has. So next we head on over to the athletic field where we see Tommy running some laps when he spots his girlfriend Sue standing there waiting for him. So he runs over to her and joyfully asks her what's up, and she says that she needs to talk with him about something important. I bet you he was shitting his fucking pants here.
Yep.
Because there's two things that you typically think is like, at least a high school guy, when they hear the whole, we need to talk, which is she's either breaking up with you or she's pregnant.
Yep.
It's probably one of the two.
Yeah, he's probably like, no, I think I'll just keep running.
Yeah, I'll enjoy my, at least my next hour while I'm in gym class until you drop terrible news on me.
Didn't you just hear I'm going to nationals?
Yeah.
You can't be having a baby. I'm just going to keep running.
Yeah, so
I can't make it to nationals taking breaks to listen to your bullshit.
He needs to get in contact with a certain SWAT officer who knows how to do abortion.
Yeah, he'll take care of it.
Yeah, old Peter. So we then see Sue and Tommy walk over behind the bleachers where she starts off the conversation by asking him if he would do something real important for her, which, without hesitation, he says, yeah, of course.
Yeah, because he's probably like, thank God. Yes, yeah, what do you need? Absolutely, I'd do whatever you need.
So without skipping a beat or even like building up to it, she drops this bomb on him when she says, I want you to take Carrie White to the prom. And before we get his answer, we get this quick little scene where we see Chris riding in a car with her boyfriend, Billy Nolan. And nothing really important happens here except we get a general idea of their relationship dynamic, as we see Billy throw an open beer can into her lap when a cop pulls up, prompting Chris to get pissed and call him a dumb shit, which in turn leads him to backhand her in the fucking face. So needless to say, their relationship is mostly dominated by horny teenager sex and a lot of fighting.
And bipolar.
Yeah.
She's clearly bipolar.
Definitely.
She's very much so in the, 1 minute, like, let's
make love.
Let me seduce you and then get the fuck off me. Fuck you. And Literally in this car ride, it happens like 4 times, and I'm just telling Billy, "Run for your life. Just get the fuck out of there now."
So after that, we then skip ahead a couple hours where we see Sue doing some homework at the coffee table while Tommy sits and watches some TV. And after a brief moment of silence between the two, we see Tommy look over at his girlfriend and say, "Yeah, I'll do it." Sue then looks up from her book and over at Tommy and gives him a warm, loving smile. So next up, we jump back over to Chris and Billy where we see them pull up to a big-ass house party. But as Billy goes to get out of the car, Chris flashes him a promiscuous smile as she tells him not to be in such a hurry, aka she wants to do sex stuff in the car. So Billy doesn't really catch on at first, even telling her that he's in a hurry to get away from her because she's a big old pain in the ass. Despite this, though, Chris continues to seduce him as we see her begin sucking on his finger. Which I gotta say, I mean, this isn't a knock if you enjoy it, whatever floats your boat, but I am turned off by finger sucking because I just think of how many germs is on the tip of your finger. Like the amount of shit that you touch with your hands and then, somebody putting them in your mouth is just not for me.
Well, a lot of people like licking buttholes, so I mean, that's I'm not gonna knock it.
Yeah, I honestly look at licking a butthole better than licking a finger.
I'm not turned off by either one. I'll just say that.
Yeah, well, whatever floats your boat. So once Chris begins sucking and licking all over his finger, Billy pretty quickly gets the point and decides the party can wait. They then start a bit of rough foreplay that ends up causing Chris to get mad and push Billy away, calling him a dumb shit. And Billy, who doesn't like being called that, smacks the shit out of her again. He does not hesitate to smack a bitch.
No, he doesn't. But she is one who probably deserves quite a few smacks.
Somehow, this kind of turns Chris on as we quickly see her get ready to give him a blowjob. And as she is working her way down south, she says that she needs him to do something for her. But before she tells him what she wants, she just says, "I hate Carrie White." And Billy suddenly sits up, looks down at Chris, who has his dick in her mouth, and says, "Who is Carrie White?"
I don't think she's sucking his penis, man. Apparently her talking very close to his penis is all it takes for Billy. She's like talking the whole time.
No, so I actually bring that up where she's definitely because
You must have a really small penis then, because
that's
no
what I'm getting
talking.
to. So this scene was actually removed in a lot of the versions in different countries besides the US because it was a blowjob. And the only thing I can think of, considering that she is talking so clearly, is that he just has a very small dick.
John Travolta is not hung at all. Yeah, I see them removing it in other countries because it's supposed to be a blowjob, but anybody who's ever experienced a blowjob knows that generally there's not that much talking going on from the person who's doing the blowjob.
Well, if you got a baby dick, I guess you can do both.
Yeah, I guess so.
So the
little fucking tic-tac floating around in there.
So the next day, we see Carrie back in the school's library as she goes back to look into the Science of Miracles or whatever book. But before she can really get that into it, we see Tommy walk up behind her and try to start up a conversation. So Carrie, who apparently has very little social skills, gets super weird as she quickly slams the book shut and attempts to hide the cover. Tommy starts up with your run-of-the-mill conversation starters like, "How are you doing and what are you reading?" But Carrie obviously wants this interaction to end as fast as possible as she gives him one-word answers and refuses to look at him. Realizing that he needs to get straight to the point, he comes right out and says it, asking her if she would like to go with him to the prom next week. So Carrie, needless to say, is shocked by this, even to the point where she asked him, believing that she must have misheard him. He then repeats himself and says that he knows this last minute, and before he can finish his sentence, She takes off running out of the library, leaving Tommy stunned at her reaction. We then cut to Carrie sitting outside looking sad, hidden away next to this set of stairs, when Miss Collins spots her and walks over to see what the problem is. And she is immediately like, what did those bitches do now? But Carrie tells her that it's not that. Tommy Ross just asked her to the prom, and considering everyone knows Tommy dates Sue, she assumes the girls are trying to trick her. Now, Miss Collins assumes this is the case as well, but she doesn't let Carrie know that, and she actually tries to make her feel good about getting asked out, and maybe Tommy just really wants to go with her, which, if I was Carrie, I would roll my eyes so fucking hard at that, because it's one of them statements that everybody knows is bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very, for as socially awkward as Carrie is, she picks up on the fact that they're just trying to fuck with her immediately.
Yep. So after cheering Carrie up a bit and explaining that she is naturally pretty, she just needs to put a little effort into her looks. We then cut to Miss Collins having a meeting with Tommy and Sue, where she asks her what we are all thinking. What the fuck is this all about? And Sue tells her that Tommy asked her to the prom because she asked him to in order to help Carrie be more sociable and actually have a good time with other human beings. And Miss Collins doesn't believe that shit for a second, telling Sue that she isn't that stupid, because if Tommy takes Carrie to the prom, then Sue won't be able to go. I guess you're not allowed in if you don't bring a date?
Yeah, I don't know if that's
weird.
How it was back in the day.
Yeah. Why would a school care if you have a date or not?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Definitely not like that in my time, but then again, I never went to prom, so I wouldn't know.
So Miss Collins then looks over at Tommy and asks him why he would even agree to this, and he doesn't really answer her, eventually telling her that this is really between him and Sue, and doesn't see why Miss Collins is even talking to them about this. He then says that it doesn't matter anyway because Carrie already said no. But Sue interrupts and says that he can put a little more effort in and ask her again, to which Miss Collins says, how about you don't ask her at all? And this essentially erupts into this back and forth debate between Sue and Miss Collins, with Tommy kind of stuck in the middle, because Tommy doesn't really give a shit about helping Carrie have a good time or taking her to the prom. He is only doing it to satisfy Sue, but at the same time, he doesn't think Miss Collins should be able to intervene in their plans for the dance. This ends up causing Sue and Miss Collins to get into an argument, with Sue telling her that she can't order someone not to take someone else to the prom, but Collins responds by saying that she can make sure they don't hurt Carrie again. And Sue finally shouts at her, saying we aren't trying to hurt her, we are trying to help her. Realizing that she isn't getting anywhere with Sue, Miss Collins then looks over at Tommy and says, don't you think you're going to look ridiculous walking into prom with Carrie White? Which is kind of fucked up to say.
And Tommy's like, shit, I'm 30 years old, so it's going to look ridiculous no matter what when I walk into prom.
Before Tommy can answer, Sue jumps back in and says, we don't care how we look, as she shoots a glance over at Tommy. And we all know that look from a woman. Like, that's the, you better back me up here look.
Yeah, I feel Tommy in this situation. He's like stuck in the middle of this shit. He doesn't really give a fuck about either one. He's doing this shit for his girlfriend, but at the same time, he's like, back the fuck off. Like, it's none of your fucking business.
So Tommy, who once again thinks this whole idea and argument is stupid and pointless, just can't contain his laughter as he begins chuckling, which needless to say doesn't sit well with Sue. So after all that, we then cut to later that day, where we see Tommy, without Sue, pull up to Carrie's house and knock on the door. Carrie cautiously opens the door like she has never had a visitor before, and when she sees who it is, she immediately, with a very surprised look on her face, asks him why he is there. He then asks her if he can come in, but Carrie gets a scared look on her face as she shakes her head no and looks back into the living room to see if her mother is close by. She then tells him that her mother is resting and asks him again, what does he want? And again, he asks her to go to the prom with him Friday night. Carrie, who is trying to end this conversation ASAP before her mother catches Tommy at the door, tells him no and asks him why he is doing this. And he tells her that he really appreciates what she said about his poem the other day, and he would like to return the nice gesture and take her to the dance. Carrie doesn't believe this shit, though, and she needs to get him out of here right now, as she then hears her mother yell her name from the back room. Carrie then tells him that he has to go right now before they get caught, but he tells her that he isn't leaving until she says yes. And after a bit of back and forth, she finally gives in and agrees to go with him as long as he leaves right now. He then smiles real big as he goes to tell her he will pick her up at 8, but before he can even finish his sentence, she quietly shuts the door in his face to go tend to her mother. Poor Tommy. He must really love his girlfriend, because I personally would not go this far. Like, I go through all of this. No. Especially for a dance. It's like just a couple hour dance.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely pulled in the middle of this. Poor Carrie's like scared to death because, getting asked to prom is a sin.
Or having a boy knock on a door is a sin. You basically just had sex.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
He literally touched all over our front door with his knuckle, and you know what that means.
You're pregnant.
Yeah.
With a bastard baby.
With the Antichrist.
So later that night, we see Billy, Chris, and 2 of his friends have snuck into, I don't know if it's a local farm or a slaughterhouse, maybe. I'm not sure. But they're carrying a ladder and an empty gas can. His friends are super dumb and annoying. And for some reason, one of them thinks that the painted picture of pigs on the side of the building is hilarious. I don't get it. I don't get what was funny about it. I don't know if you've seen something that I didn't see.
No,
They're just stupid.
Anything funny? I mean, he made the joke about his ex, like being
a pig,
posing for one of these paintings, calling his ex a pig. But outside of that, none of it was that funny.
So they end up using the ladder to climb over this big fence. And once over, they find the pig pen where we see Billy climb inside with the pigs while holding a sledgehammer. And once inside, he picks a target, rears the hammer back, and swings with full force, hitting the pig in the head, and proceeds to brutally beat this pig to death. This is kind of a creepy scene because he totally overdoes it.
Yeah, he's a little too much into this shit.
Yeah, he goes pretty far with that sled. I feel like you 1 or 2 hits and it would be, good enough.
There's a subplot of this movie where he is a serial killer.
Yeah, that's kind of the route I was going. So once he Ted Bundy's this fucking pig, he then gets the gas can from his buddy and begins filling it up with the pig's blood in order to use it for a prank they are planning for the prom. So next we head over to Carrie's house where we see her and her mother eating dinner. I don't know if you caught it, but her mom asks her about why she's not eating something. And she says it gives her pimples. And her mom then says, pimples are God's way of chastising you. Mm-hmm. This bitch is crazy as fuck, dude. Like, acne is God's way of keeping dicks out of you.
Yes. Yeah, I do want to point out the awesome fucking cinematography in this shot with them sitting down when the candle goes out, the lightning flashing with the picture of the Last Supper behind them. It is a awesome foreshadowing of what's to come. And I think the way that they implemented that foreshadowing with the cinematography and the lightning, I thought was one of the coolest shots of the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, actually, this next part that I'm literally going to talk about has a really cool, I got a little note for the cinematography here. So anyway, Carrie then tells her mom about her invite to the prom, which doesn't go well at all. And this is where we get this really awesome lightning strike across her face as she's given Carrie that, like, what the fuck did you say look? Yeah, it's really great timing. So Mrs. White immediately shoots this idea down, causing Carrie to go into defense mode as she begins telling her that everybody's going and she just wants to be normal. And how does Mrs. White respond to this, you may ask? By throwing a glass of water in her daughter's face.
Yeah, this bitch is crazy.
She's crazy, yeah. Despite this move, though, Carrie handles it pretty well as she wipes her face and starts to tell her how good of a guy Tommy is. But Mrs. White doesn't want to hear about it at all as she responds by just yelling no over and over again. She then angrily stands up and orders Carrie to the closet to pray, but Carrie has finally hit her breaking point as she screams back no and begins yelling that not everyone is bad and not everything is a sin. This, of course, just pisses Mrs. White off even more as she then walks over and grabs Carrie by the arm as she begins screaming about how the boys only want to have sex with her now that she has hit puberty. She then demands Carrie tell Tommy that she won't be going to the prom with him, but once again, Carrie stands up to her mother and says a defiant no. Now, the whole time this argument is going on, we can see that a loud thunderstorm has begun outside. And as the argument gets more intense, so does the storm, which I think is a great touch. So Mrs. White then gets up and goes to close the windows because of the rain, and a very upset and emotional Carrie screams for her to come back and talk to her. And right before Mrs. White makes it to the first window, we see Carrie's power slam the window closed, freaking her mother out, causing her to back into a corner and look at her daughter with fear in her eyes.
You think that storm out of like strengthening was her anger from her telekinesis?
I do.
She caused the storm?
I do. Yeah. And I think that there is a lot of little, cool little stuff like that in the movie, like you see with cinematography, with sound. Yeah, I think there's a lot of little cool stuff like that in here. We then get this heavy silence between the two with only the thunder in the background. And right as the flash of lightning goes off, Carrie breaks this silence by telling, not asking, telling her mother that she is going to the prom with Tommy on Friday night and things are gonna start changing around here. She pretty much just fucking mic dropped that bit.
She's like, I got powers now, bitch.
Yep. And a period.
And a period. I got basement blood and telekinesis, so you can take your Bible and shove it up your fucking ass.
You can just hit yourself in the face with your Bible now.
And she made her hit herself in the face with the Bible. She like forced her mom to go in the closet and pray.
So now that Carrie has stood up to her mom and put her foot down, Mrs. White gets herself together, looks at Carrie, and just says one word, witch. And after a brief second of silence, she then accuses Carrie of having Satan's powers. So Carrie then explains that if she concentrates hard enough on something, she can move things with her mind, and she even read about it in books. But Mrs. White basically tells her she's stupid because Satan is sneaky and he has tricked her just like he tricked her dad. And Carrie then jumps at the chance to tell her mother that she has known what really happened to her dad for a while now because everyone in town has said that he ran off with another woman. And she then ends the argument by telling her that she is going to prom, that she can't stop her, and she doesn't want to talk about it anymore. And this is the first time that we have seen Carrie look confident and happy.
Yeah.
It's this moment. So next we head on over to the school gym where we see that it has already been decorated for the prom. And by the looks of it, it seems to be pretty late at night at this point. And we then head inside where we see Cuntbag Chris and Little Dick Bill in the gym holding flashlights. Billy then climbs up a tall ladder holding that gas can full of blood. And when he reaches the top, he begins pouring it into a metal bucket that is secured to a support beam. And while attempting to pour it, some spills out and lands on Chris's flashlight, prompting her to once again call her boyfriend a stupid shit, which of course pisses him off. Sure that if his arm was long enough, he'd have backhanded her from that ladder.
He smacked her in his mind.
Yeah. Anyway, we see Billy look down at her and tell her to keep her tits on, which never heard that before, and he might just let her pull the rope when the time comes, to which Chris responds, I plan on it. So basically what we see here, Billy and Chris are setting up some kind of prank involving the pig's blood at the prom, and I'm sure 99% of you guys know what this prank is. So the next day, we get this quick little important scene where we see Billy's dumbass friend Freddie approach the student that is in charge of the dance committee, I guess. I'm not sure exactly his position.
He's got some important student position.
And he says that he really wants to help out with the prom. And the guy's like, damn, I really could have used you last week when we were doing all the work to get the gym ready. And Freddie is like, fuck that. I want to collect the votes for prom king and queen. And after thinking about it for a moment, the guy agrees. So this kind of tells us, whatever the prank is that they're planning, it's going to involve the king and queen announcement on stage.
Yeah, for this guy apparently being like a student body president, something like that, supposed to be smart.
Yeah.
He completely didn't see through that at all.
Yeah.
I would have definitely thought voter fraud, 100%. Like, why does this shitbag want to count votes? And I also love how this guy was willing to risk the entire prank for an extra hour and a half of sleep. He's like, nope, I will not be here at 6:30. I'll be here at 8.
Yeah. So back at the gym, we see that a bunch of students are still decorating, and we get two conversations taking place at the same time. One is with an unnamed girl who climbs up this tall ladder where when she reaches the top, she talks to Sue. She then asks her what's up with the rumors about Tommy taking Carrie to the prom, and Sue tells her that yes, it is true, and this totally shocks the other girl, who then asks why he isn't taking her. And Sue says that she asked him to take Carrie because she felt that she owed it to her after what they did to her in the locker room. Down on the basketball court, we see Chris and Norma talking a bit, where Chris is, of course, not helping do any of the work. But instead, she is just staring up at the ceiling with this smirk on her face. Norma sees this and tries to ask her what's going on, but Chris stays pretty tight-lipped. That is, until she asks her if it has something to do with her not being able to come to the prom. Because remember, she got banned from the prom by Miss Collins. So she then smiles real big and says, oh, I'm going to be there. And right as Norma goes to say something, Chris tells her to shut up and that she will tell her later. So after this, we then get a bit of a montage of everybody getting ready for the big night, big prom night. We get a pretty funny argument between Tommy and his two friends about tuxedos, like with or without ruffles, to which I agree with the tall, lanky dude that ruffles look like shit.
Yep. Yeah, agreed.
I was surprised that did you notice the tuxedo t-shirt had printed ruffles on it?
It's a high quality printed tuxedo t-shirt.
I love the line where he says, I just don't have a tuxedo body. What does that mean?
Not built for it, man.
Just not built for it.
Just not built for it.
So after that, we jump on over to the white residence where we see a excited Carrie in her room getting ready for the prom, when suddenly her cunt bag mom walks in and says, red. I knew it was going to be red, talking about the color of the dress. And before Carrie even corrects her, I was like, red? Where do you see red? Like, the dress is closer to white than it is red, because it's not very...
Was she talking about lipstick?
No, she's talking about the dress. And that's when, and then Carrie says, no, it's pink. Like, it's not red, it's pink.
Yeah, it's not even close to. That's why I thought she was talking about the lipstick being closer to red. but actually pink than the dress. The dress is like a super light pink.
Yeah. She should have said, "Oh, Mom, Satan's got your eyes. He's making you see things. You must have sinned." She's like, "You gotta go sit in the closet for a few hours.
Yeah.
Get rid of that Satan in your eyes."
I just put this bitch in the closet for like a week.
So
Put that out there.
So Carrie, despite her mother's negative attitude, still remains cheerful as she tells her the dress is pink and not red. And then she holds out a corsage and says, "Look at what Tommy got me. Isn't it beautiful?" Her mother then walks over to her, not saying a fucking word, stands there for a second, and then delivers one of my favorite lines of the whole movie. "I can see your dirty pillows."
Yeah, that is the worst word for boobs.
That is my
titties, whatever you want to call them. Don't ever call them dirty pillows. For the love of God.
This is my favorite way to describe breasts now.
You know what? You know what her mom is? Her mom is a pray the gay away mom.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Man, dirty
She may
pillows.
be worse than pray the gay away. She may be like, "I'm going to lock you in the closet and beat you." Until
well, we find out later. She's like, "I'll just kill you."
We are going to cut your nuts off.
So Carrie's like, they're called breasts, not dirty pillows. And every woman has them. And she realizes her mom's been drinking way too much of the Kool-Aid and is on some crazy shit. So she goes back to doing her makeup when suddenly Mrs. White says, "Take off that dress and we will burn it together as we ask for forgiveness." Carrie instantly says no, causing her mom to straight up act a fool as she begins pulling her own hair, hitting herself in the head, and pacing around the room as she repeats, "He's not coming, he's not coming." Maybe she's like, "He's not coming in you because I'm sewing your pussy shut."
Yeah. I will say in her mom's defense, and this is the only time I will defend her mom through the whole movie, that dress those nipples are very, very, very much sticking through that dress. I would definitely tell my daughter that you're going to have to get something that your nipples are not so obviously sticking straight through.
You need dirty pillowcases.
Dirty pillowcases, yes. AKA a bra. Imagine if she would have had a son. She'd have been like collecting laundry. Like, how does Satan's dried up photoplasm keep getting all over your socks?
Oh,
we gotta pray.
Yeah. He gets up and got morning wood, and she's like, "You must descend. You wouldn't have a boner if you didn't sin."
You better be jacking off to John 13 in here.
No fucking wonder Carrie's dad just up and dipped out, man.
Yeah, this guy probably fucking he probably had the worst post-nut clarity ever. He's probably like, "Oh my God, what the fuck did I just do?"
She's Kanye West crazy.
She make Kanye West look like a fucking saint.
So Carrie is like, "Holy shit, Mom. Like, what are you doing right now?" She's like, "You need a fucking Xanax." But Mrs. White isn't giving up so easily as she begins yelling at her daughter, telling her it is not too late. She can still back out and stay home with her. Carrie, once again, for like the 40th time, tells her no, she's going, but her mom just won't let up. And this ends up pushing Carrie to the edge as she screams, "Shut up," using her powers to throw Mrs. White onto the bed and makes it where she can't move. And right after this happens, she hears a car pull up, and when she looks out of the window, we see Tommy getting out of the car. This distraction causes Carrie to lose focus on holding her mother down, and as soon as she gets a chance, Mrs. White jumps up and immediately runs over and grabs Carrie's arm and attempts to convince her to stay home again. Carrie then throws her back onto the bed, locking her arms at her side as she tells her, "Just stay there, don't say a word until I'm gone," as she then grabs her stuff and heads down to meet Tommy. A now stunned and frightened Mrs. White sits up in the bed, watching Carrie head out for a night of sin, and then she says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." And we now have arrived at the final destination that all of the hardcore fire and brimstone religious people end up, which is It's witchcraft, and we gotta kill this person.
If we can't get it on our side, kill it.
It's funny how no matter which direction they take, they always seem to end up in the same place.
Witchcraft.
It's witchcraft. Something evil is here, and we're gonna have to kill it. So next we head over to the senior prom where everyone's having a great time, and we see Tommy and Carrie pull up. And at first, Carrie's a little nervous and hesitant to go inside, but Tommy does a really good job at being understanding and also supportive, where he is able to talk her into relaxing a bit and heading in to have some fun. And once inside, Tommy meets up with his buddies and their dates, who are immediately very nice to Carrie and they kind of take her under their wing. We also see Carrie run into Miss Collins, who you remember really didn't want Tommy to ask her to the prom. She was very against this idea. And she sits down at the table to chat with Carrie while Tommy takes a hint and walks off for a moment. And while sitting there, she basically asks Carrie how it's going, and she sees that Carrie is really, for possibly the first time in her life, actually having a great time and feels like she's normal. She even at one point describes it as feeling like she's on Mars. After this conversation, Miss Collins realizes that maybe Sue and Tommy were trying to truly help Carrie out and are not planning some cruel practical joke. Once she comes to this conclusion, she caresses Carrie's face while telling her to have a lovely time and even gets up and kisses Tommy on the cheek, pretty much telling us and Tommy that she now trusts him with Carrie.
And that she shouldn't have a teacher's job because kissing your male students is probably not in the cards.
I don't know. Back then, they probably had lax rules.
Yeah.
So after that, Tommy then starts telling her that his buddies are heading to a place called the Beehive in a little bit. And before he can even finish his sentence, Carrie interrupts him, telling him that she's okay with him bailing to go hang out with his friends. But Tommy's like, no, I was asking if you wanted to come with me. We then see Carrie light up like a light bulb because this is the first time she has ever been invited somewhere with a group of friends. Tommy then asks her to dance with him, to which she claims she doesn't know how and would rather sit at the table, but Tommy's not taking no for an answer as he gets her up, takes her to the dance floor and shows her how to slow dance. And we then get this great shot of Tommy and Carrie slow dancing as the camera spins around them in the opposite direction. Things seem to be going pretty good until Carrie slightly messes up on one of her steps, to which she immediately starts having this breakdown, telling Tommy that she's sorry and she can't do anything right. But Tommy calms her down, saying everything is okay and she's doing fine. He then looks into her eyes and begins kissing her as the camera continues to spin around them.
Damn, Tommy, I don't think that was in the itinerary.
I gotta say,
I don't think that was part of the plan.
Tommy is doing an excellent job at giving this girl who has been beat down and ridiculed her whole life this magical night.
Yeah.
Most certainly the most magical night of her whole fucking life. But the kiss was probably a little too far.
Yeah, well, I think Tommy's getting feelings for her here. I believe that in the book, he does start to have some feelings for her at the end here.
Yeah.
So I looked up some quotes from the book, and so his last the last lines about him, his last thoughts before everything goes down is him talking about how he does have some feelings for her when he kisses her.
Yeah, this is definitely our first hint that he is, like when an undercover cop is, he's in too deep. That's
Yeah.
kind of what's going on here.
Well, yeah, it sucks for Sue because now he's fallen for Carrie, and Sue, who is just trying to
be nice,
and make up for her really bitch thing that she did, her boyfriend's now at the dance falling in love with this other girl.
So after this kiss, Carrie is, damn near in love, and she asks Tommy why he asked her to the prom in the first place. Like, why me? And he decides not to tell her the truth and stick with the lie that she liked his poem and he wanted to take her. And, I was thinking to myself, if I were Tommy, would I have told her the truth or not? Because if you lie to her, what's going to happen tomorrow when she doesn't understand why you were still with Sue and not interested in her all of a sudden. Like,
now, yeah, now I agree with that. But if he's in which we know from the book, he is where he's actually catching feelings for her, I think Sue might be the one getting cut loose.
Yeah, but even if that was the case, like, it's not like Carrie's gonna wake up tomorrow and he's gonna already broken up with Sue and he's with her. Like, that probably is not gonna happen that fast.
He might, because word might get back around to Sue that he was kissing Carrie, and Sue might be like, what the fuck? That was not in the itinerary.
Yeah.
You were just supposed to take her to the dance, and that might be the end of that. That might be the last argument. Like, I agree that if he wasn't catching feelings for her and Sue was his main focus, yeah, kissing her was probably too far because you're just going to hurt her more in the long run. They created themselves a dilemma. Somebody's going to get hurt here.
Yeah.
Unless Sue is just like, hey, I feel so bad about throwing tampons at her that we can just share Tommy.
Yeah. It is an interesting situation because I feel like there's no way he has fallen in love with Carrie so much in the past 2 hours that he would throw his relationship with Sue away the next day.
Well, yeah, this is also like I think the book is a little more drawn out too. I think the movie's a little more condensed.
Yeah, it is. I've read the book a couple times, but I can't really remember if this is necessarily too drawn out. I feel like I want to say she has more interactions with Tommy in between when she says yes in the actual prom than what we see in the movie.
Yeah.
But I don't remember the exact length of time.
Yeah, I think there was definitely some stuff that had to get cut for movie's sake. Because in the movie, it seems like, this just happened. Like, it all just happened within a day or two. But I don't think that's the case.
So after they dance, they then head back to the table where it is now time to vote for the king and queen. And this is where Carrie notices that her and Tommy are on the ballot, which definitely puts Carrie a little on edge again. But once again, Tommy works his magic and convinces her that even if they win, all they got to do is get up on stage for a little bit. They slow dance, they get their picture taken for the yearbook. And this, of course, settles Carrie's nerves back down a little bit as she then looks up at the stage and says, "It's so beautiful." And Tommy then says, "Hey, you're so beautiful." And we can literally almost see Cupid fire the fucking arrow right into Carrie here. Man, Tommy just kind of digging a deeper hole with this situation here.
I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
He's Team Carrie now. He's kind of. I mean, in his defense, his girlfriend did make him take her to the dance, and he was never. He was never about bullying or anything against Carrie. He actually takes up for her whenever that teacher's like making fun of her for saying something about his poem. Like, he takes up for her, so he's obviously doesn't get caught up in the whole bullying and all that shit. Yeah, it sucks for Sue. I mean, I feel bad for Sue, but
she's hot. She'll get another dude.
Yeah, she did kind of create this situation. I mean, he didn't want to do this, and she did force it on him.
So as we see everybody start to fill out their ballots for King and Queen, we interrupt this magical moment with a quick jump over to Carrie's house, where we see her cuntbag mother pacing around the kitchen when she spots a butcher knife on the counter. She quickly picks it up and begins chopping this carrot into a bunch of pieces. Now, the thing is, she's not chopping these carrots like she's going to cook them or make a fucking salad. She's like testing this knife out because apparently she's just pacing around the house thinking of ways to kill her own fucking daughter.
She is doing her best Lorraine Bobbitt impression here on this carrot.
I'm going to cut Tommy's dick off. Maybe that's what happened to Billy. He's just got a little nub now. Got a little run-in with Mrs. White.
Maybe that's what happened to Carrie's actual dad.
Maybe. So we are finally at the moment we have all been waiting for. As we jump back to the prom, where we see they are about to announce the winner for prom, king and queen. And while this is happening, we see Cuntbag Chris and Tiny Dick Bill secretly watching from their hiding spot, giggling with excitement. And I guess Billy makes some kind of noise or something because Chris immediately scolds him for it, telling him to be quiet or they're gonna get caught. And this is when we finally find out who the target of their prank is, which, it's pretty obvious. But we then hear Billy say, "That Carrie White sure is cute." And after a brief moment of silence, Billy then says, "I thought you said they were going to win." And Chris responds, "They are going to win. It won't even be close. I called in a few favors." I highly doubt she called in any fucking favors.
She sucked in a few favors.
My money, she gave handjob to that Freddy guy.
Yeah.
I don't think she went for the BJ. I think he's a bottom feeder. She probably could have got him with an old-fashioned handy.
Yeah, maybe. She might enjoy using her mouth.
Yeah.
Get some more practice on her solid English with the dick in her mouth.
Yep. So after that, we then see Handjob Freddy and that bitch Norma going table to table collecting the ballots. And after they have them all, they pretend to kiss in the hallway as Norma throws them away behind her back and pulls a new stack from Freddy's jacket. She then walks over and hands them to the judges, and as they begin to count them, we see Norma signal to Chris and Billy, who are hidden under the stage. But we get a bit of a surprise here because as the camera pans around the stage, we see that Sue has snuck into the dance wearing just, regular normal clothes in order to see how Tommy and Carrie are doing. This is the shit you had to do before cell phones. Like, you had to physically go somewhere to find out what was happening. Like, nowadays, Sue would just, text Tommy, "Hey, how's it going with Carrie?"
Yeah. The whole main plot aside, had this not been happening, she would have been very disappointed when she found out that it's going really well.
Well, she does see them kiss on stage, and she doesn't seem mad about it. So, I don't know. Maybe she's
just, into open relationship.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe she doesn't get too upset.
Maybe she's got a little thing for Carrie.
Maybe.
Maybe
three-way.
She's seen that nice sensual shower before that basement blood game.
So, like I said, we see Sue hiding behind the stage looking for her boyfriend, and as the camera pans up, we follow a rope, which is hidden by the streamer, that eventually leads us to the blood-filled bucket, which we now see is positioned directly above the king and queen, the little chairs and stuff set up on stage. And with that last bit of info, we now know what Chris and Little Dick Bill's plan is. They have rigged the vote in order to get Tommy and Carrie on stage, where once they are up there, Chris is going to pull the rope, dumping the bucket of pig's blood all over Carrie and Tommy, humiliating them, well, mostly Carrie, in front of the whole school right before they graduate. So this is a whole prank. So right as the camera zooms into the bucket of blood, we hear the host of the dance get on the microphone and announce the new king and queen of the prom, Tommy Ross and Carrie White, which causes the whole gym to erupt in applause. And as the spotlight settles on them sitting at a table, we see that this is like a fucking dream for Carrie. At this point, she doesn't even believe this is real. This is some kind of surreal dream to her. So Tommy then stands up and grabs Carrie's hand, attempting to get her to snap out of it and walk with him up to the stage. And as she looks up at him, we see her eyes are beginning to tear up. And we then get this nice slow motion shot of them walking through this crowd of smiling, cheerful people as everyone continues to clap for them. And Carrie is happier than a pig in a blanket, which makes what's about to happen all the more sad and devastating.
Happier than a pig in a bucket.
Mm.
Yeah, you missed that.
So I will say that I think that the brilliance of this movie is what Brian De Palma and Sissy Spacek really accomplished here, is making you very sympathetic for the main character, but also you kind of fall in love with this really nice thing that they're trying to do for Carrie by giving her this magical night. Tommy does like almost too good of a job making her feel like really special and just like really normal and accepted for the first time in her life. And by doing that, it makes you dread what is coming. Like, I wouldn't change the story, but there's that part of you that wants this prank to fail and Carrie to go on with the rest of her life and be happy and confident.
Yeah.
And
they do a really good job on the contrast of they take you up so far that whenever the fall happens, it makes it that much more dreadful.
Yeah, I remember when I was watching it this week and I kind of got to the point where they're going up on stage and it kind of clicked back in my brain of what was about to happen. I'd kind of forgotten and I'd gotten caught up in like, man, Carrie is, she's happy that she's experiencing just hanging out with her peers for the first time, and Tommy's doing a great job of just like bringing her out of her shell. And it's gonna just all be so bad in a minute.
Her bitch mom's not getting her way.
Yeah.
It's great.
So, as we see Tommy and Carrie walk up onto the stage, we then see Little Dick Bill and Cuntbag Chris smiling from their hiding spots, waiting for the moment when they can pull that rope. We also see that Sue, who has no idea what is about to happen, is still peeking out from behind the stage, watching. Next, we see them hand Carrie a big-ass bouquet of flowers and place this very fancy, shiny tiara on top of her head. She then looks out towards the crowd, who is still cheering for her as she fills with an amazing feeling of joy and acceptance. And as we pan over to everyone, we get a nice close-up of Miss Collins, who looks like a proud mom watching Carrie in this fantastic moment. And as this is going on, Sue notices a rope that is next to her begin to move, and she's thinking this is a little odd. So she begins kind of following the rope up with her eyes, where she eventually spots the bucket. We then cut back to Miss Collins, who spots Sue, who is walking around the edge of the crowd with a very concerned look on her face as she stares up towards the roof. And remember, she suspected that Sue wanted Tommy to take Carrie to the dance because they were planning this big prank on her. So she's starting to think that she was right here. So now that Sue has walked almost to the back of the crowd, she can kind of see the whole rope and bucket set up and how, when it tips over, it's going to land right on Carrie and Tommy. And this is like her oh shit moment. And right as she puts this together, we see Tommy lean in and begin kissing Carrie on stage. But that doesn't even faze Sue, and she is now dead set on stopping this from happening. And right as she runs towards the bottom of the stage where Cuntbag Chris is holding the rope, we see Miss Collins run after Sue, which fucks everything up. Because right as Sue pulls back the little, what is that thing called? It's like on the bottom of the stage.
Like a curtain?
That little curtain decoration thing. She spots Chris and Billy. But before she can stop them, Miss Collins comes up from behind and pulls her away and begins confronting her. Because like I said, she thinks Sue is in on this shit. God damn it, Miss Collins. Like, why couldn't you just mind your own fucking business?
So that's another thing I think is the genius of what they did with this movie is when you're watching this for the first time, you still don't know if Sue and Tommy are in on this. Like, this is in the beginning, you're sure that they are in on this, and then as the story plays out and Tommy and Carrie get to the prom, and it's more and more like, okay, maybe they're not in on this, but you see Sue, like, dip out on dinner to go, so you're like, "Okay." It makes you think maybe they are in on it. So you kinda have this back and forth, and it's at this moment that you finally do realize that they weren't in on it, that Sue was legitimately trying to do a nice thing by having Tommy take Carrie to the prom, and I think that's really, really genius the way they did it in the movie. I'm not sure how the book does that, but I know in the movie, you really don't know until this moment, and I thought that was super smart.
Yeah, so another part to that is Sue almost stops it. Like, Sue gets there, she figures it out, she's like, "Oh, shit." She literally makes it to where she literally is, like, a foot away from them while holding this rope, and then she gets stopped by someone else trying to do something good,
Yeah.
which leads to eventually everyone's death.
Yeah, this is the 2 people that the 2 people that are on Carrie's side,
Yeah,
essentially, one of them stopping the other from saving Carrie.
yeah. So Chris looks out and sees Miss Collins dragging a very pissed off Sue away, and she realizes that this is her moment because as soon as Sue tells Miss Collins what's really going on, this prank is fucked. And right as we see Miss Collins shoving Sue out of the gym and slamming the door shut in her face, cuntbag Chris pulls the rope, tipping the bucket over, dumping a massive amount of pig's blood all over poor Carrie White. And as the blood runs down Carrie's face and arms, we see a shocked look on her face as the crowd immediately goes silent. And they stay silent for quite some time until Norma just bursts out laughing while pointing at Carrie. But we also see that the people around her do not find this funny at all. And what's interesting here is the scene is still in slow motion. We get no sound from Carrie or anybody, and all we can hear is silence and the amplified sound of the blood still dripping from the bucket. And in my opinion, this was a fantastic way to portray this event on film.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost as if you were in the perspective of Carrie in shock. Like,
Yeah,
everything is
yeah,
silent to her. She is in absolute shock. All you hear is that blood
yeah.
dripping off of her, and everything else has just disappeared in her mind.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. So Tommy then starts yelling at the crowd, not knowing who did this. And as he turns and tries to comfort Carrie, suddenly the bucket comes loose and causes it to fall and hit an unsuspecting Tommy right in the top of the head, knocking him unconscious right in front of Carrie. And as Carrie stands there, completely drenched in dark red blood, with everyone staring at her and Norma laughing her ass off, she begins to hear her mother's words from earlier that they are all going to laugh at her in her head. And despite the fact that almost nobody is laughing, Carrie starts to picture them laughing. And it is at this point where Carrie snaps.
It makes you wonder, had Tommy not gotten knocked out, like, if anybody could have avoided
Mhm.
what's about to happen, it was Tommy.
Yeah.
If anybody could have talked her down, it would have been him, who also got hit with blood. Not as bad as her, but yeah, he was the last straw, and that bucket falling on his head probably just made it even worse for her.
Yeah, because now her like knight in shining armor is down in front of her. So years of torment, bullying, solitude, and cruel treatment by her own mother have finally boiled to the surface and drove Carrie to seek revenge on everyone in this moment. And right as Chris and Billy crawl out from under the stage, celebrating their prank, Carrie uses her powers to slam all the gym doors shut, effectively trapping everyone inside. And to make matters even more crazy, she pops all of the colored bulbs except for the red ones that are now shining on her, pretty much making her look evil. And after seeing this creepy shit on stage, people from the crowd attempt to leave, but quickly find out they can't, which doesn't take long at all to start a panic. Carrie then uses the emergency fire hose to start spraying everyone down, which only makes the pandemonium worse. We do get an awesome shot of Norma's dumbass getting fucked up by this hose, which eventually sends her through a table, and hopefully it killed her.
I thought the red was really interesting. It was almost Carrie's way of covering everybody else in blood.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
She literally, that was her way of covering everybody else in blood and at the same time making her blood disappear.
Yeah, makes her look normal.
Yeah.
Man, I like that. That's good. So the real issue here, because of this big-ass water hose spraying water everywhere, is the floor is now very wet. And we start to see electricity from the stage lights begin to flash and spark, causing the principal and a teacher to get violently electrocuted after attempting to use the microphone.
Should have got her name right.
Yep. And now that Carrie has got her first taste of that sweet, sweet revenge, she wants more as she then begins sending bolts of electricity into the panicked crowd, killing many people. And as Cuntbag Chris and Little Dick Bill watch in horror through a window from outside, they see Miss Collins get crushed by a falling piece of the ceiling. Carrie then pins one of the teachers against the back wall of the stage, sending large bolts of electricity into him, which unfortunately causes that whole wall to immediately catch fire and start this huge blaze behind her. The fire very quickly spreads through the gym, turning the bleachers basically into a bunch of fire logs, and we then get one of the most memorable shots of the film as we see a blood-soaked, deranged Carrie walk right in the middle of these huge-ass flames. We then get an outside shot of the gym, which is now engulfed in 20-foot tall flames, and we then see the main doors open on their own, as Carrie slowly walks out of the fire, surrounded by the screams of all of the people burning alive inside. We then jump forward a little bit where a fire truck comes rushing down the street heading towards the high school, when it then passes by Carrie, who is just walking down the road with a blank stare. And right as this happens, Chris and Billy are hauling ass out of there when suddenly Chris spots Carrie. Remember, she fucking hates Carrie, especially now. So she decides that she is going to run a bitch down. And right before they hit her going 50 miles per hour, Carrie quickly turns around and uses her powers to make the car miss her, flip 8 times, and explode into a huge ball of flames, killing Chris and Billy instantly.
Nice. Good shit.
And now that almost everybody is dead, we then see Carrie arrive at her house, where her mother is waiting on her so she can kill her for being a witch. So Carrie walks into her house, still covered in blood, and the first thing she sees are all these candles lit everywhere, which seems like to me, her mom is doing this as a sacrifice killing or something, almost like a ritual.
I don't know, but if I walked into the house and seen all those candles, I would have turned my ass right around and walk out.
And as she walks through the house looking for her mother, she starts to notice that the place is all fucked up, with pictures ripped off the walls, chairs are broken, and random items are scattered around the floor. Once she realizes that her mother isn't in any of the rooms on the first floor, she then decides to check upstairs. And once up there, she heads to the bathroom to wash some of the pig's blood off of her body. And as she walks through the doorway, we catch a glimpse of Mrs. White hiding behind the door. Carrie then, still having no idea where her mom is, decides to take a bath where we see her wash all of the blood off and change into her nightgown. And as she exits the bathroom, her mother comes up from behind and they share a hug as Carrie cries about what happened at the dance. And at first, everything seems fine, when suddenly Mrs. White lets go of Carrie and kneels down in front of her and says, I should have killed myself when he first put it in me. I was like, okay, well, that's an interesting way to say that.
Yeah. Just this bitch is crazy.
She then goes on to tell this story about how after that first time, Roger, Carrie's dad, promised he would never do it again. They then lived together, and despite the fact that they slept in the same bed, they never, ever had sex because, sin. So, sometime later in their relationship, old Roger got drunk off some whiskey and he got really horny. And he just couldn't hold back anymore. He then took Mrs. White up to the bedroom and got down to business. And she claims that she is now being punished because she really enjoyed the sex that night. Good God. I was like, what?
Yeah.
You had sex 2 times in your whole entire life. The second time you enjoyed it, and now you think God's punishing you.
Yes. That's just yes. Couldn't put it any better.
Yeah. So after story time, Mrs. White then invites Carrie down to the floor with her in order to pray one last time. And as Carrie gets down there and rests her head on her mother's chest, we see Mrs. White reach down and pull out that butcher knife we saw earlier. And as she is praying out loud, we see her raise the knife up above her head and bring it down, planting it right into an unsuspecting Carrie's back. A now very shocked Carrie jumps back in pain, causing her to go tumbling down the stairs where she lands in the kitchen. And as she kind of comes to, she looks up and sees her mom with this creepy looking smile on her face as she is still holding the knife, walking down to finish the job. Carrie then starts crawling towards the living room, just trying to push some space between her and her mother, but it is no use as she ends up backed into a corner and forced to use her powers again. And right as Mrs. White raises the knife again, Carrie sends a knife flying from the kitchen right into Mrs. White's knife hand, pinning it to the wall. And it doesn't just stop there, as we then see knife after knife fly through the air, stabbing her mom all over her body. What's really weird here is after Carrie sends like 8 knives into her chest and stomach, her mom is acting like she's having some kind of orgasm or something. Like she's getting pleasure from these knives.
Well, it's interesting the way she's pinned up is as if she is being crucified.
Yeah.
Her arms are pinned to the side like she's on a cross, and she's almost such like a religious fanatic. It's almost as if she's getting off being crucified, like dying the same death as Jesus.
That's gotta be what it is, because I'm like, I don't get what the fuck is going on here. Like she is full on like having sexual pleasure from this.
Yeah, she's literally getting off being crucified, paying for her sins, because she has this like major guilt that she enjoyed this sex that ended up leading to Carrie. And it's very clear if you want to use the orgasm or not, she's getting off. She's getting very much enjoyment out of being crucified for her sins, which is just the most insane level of
devotion.
Yeah, just religious fanatical beliefs.
So after about 10 orgasms, Mrs. White finally dies, still pinned to the wall, as Carrie sits huddled in the corner. And after a moment or two, she gets up, she pulls the knife out of her hand and holds her dead mother's body as she begins to scream. And right as this happens, we start to hear the house moving and shifting around when suddenly the second story begins to collapse on top of them. Carrie, realizing what is happening, then drags her mother's body into the little closet in the kitchen where she attempts to seek refuge from the collapsing house. We then get a couple outside shots where we see that the house has now burst into flames, and inside we see chunks of the wall and ceiling bursting and popping everywhere until it finally begins to sink into the ground. And as this happens, we get one last shot of Carrie still holding her dead mother's body, with blood coming out of her mouth from being crushed by a support beam. And that is a wrap on the White family.
So, man, like the guttural scream just before the house implodes on itself, so creepy. And then I think it's so kind of poetic that she dies in this room holding her mother's dead body, which this whole thing was the whole house imploding part was from her mom trying to kill her and then her being upset from having to kill her mom. They die in this room that her mom literally punishes her whole life in and makes her go pray under the stairs in this little shrine room they have set up. Very, very poetic place in the house to die.
Well, what makes it so ironic is, Carrie hates that room. Every time, her mom goes to put her in there, it's this huge issue. So you would think that if she knew she was going to die, that'd be the last place she'd want to be. And at the very end, it's the only place she wants to go. So yeah.
Well, I wonder if it's the only place or if that's the best place of like refuge the only place she felt safe in the house.
I think
because she spent so much time in there. At least she knew when she was locked in there she wasn't getting beaten.
Well, I think the reason that she went there is because she had probably her whole life this is where you go to repent for your sins you did, right? And she was like, man, I just did a whole bunch of sins.
Yeah.
So this is I need to go in here and repent before this house kills me. That's my assumption. So next we jump ahead a few days where we see Sue survive the gym massacre. And we get this quick little scene where her mom answers the phone and talks to a family friend, I guess. And she says that the doctor said that Sue is young and will eventually forget all about it.
She's not that young.
I doubt she's going to forget the time.
3.
She's not going to forget the time her classmate used telekinesis to kill the whole entire senior class during prom.
Including her boyfriend.
That is something that she will never, ever, ever forget.
Caused by her friend, which she almost saved.
Yeah.
But she was in turn stopped and in turn saved by their teacher, who was also trying to save Carrie. Yeah, she's probably not going to forget that.
Yeah, and she actually caused all this because if she would have never done this, Carrie would have been at home for the prom and not at the prom.
Yeah.
So later that day, we then see Sue holding a bouquet of flowers walking down the sidewalk when she suddenly makes a right into a yard. And as the camera changes angles, we see that this is where Carrie's house once sat and has now been reduced to a pretty big pile of ash and burnt debris with a for sale sign sticking out of the ground, which definitely on purpose that the for sale sign was across.
Yeah, whoever thought the idea of making the for sale sign in the shape of a cross was probably not thinking very clearly.
No. So as a very sad and depressed Sue walks closer and closer towards the pile of ash, we see that someone has written on the sign, Carrie White burns in hell, with an arrow pointing down. And right as Sue bends down on one knee to place the flowers on Carrie's unofficial grave, suddenly a bloody arm reaches out of the ground and grabs Sue, causing her to freak out. And as she begins screaming, "No, no," we see her mother wake her up from a nightmare. And that is the end of Carrie.
You think maybe the real estate guy was just a cheap ass and they already had a cross there and he just went there and wrote for sale on it?
Well, it's a dream. I mean, that may not even be real. Yeah, I don't know.
I did read in the book apparently that Carrie and Sue, Carrie's able to reach out to Sue like with her telekinesis.
Yeah.
Does find out that Sue was trying to help her and
well, I believe so Carrie doesn't go home. She dies like on the side of the road because she walks through the whole town and destroys the town, which they couldn't do in the movie. But I believe she collapses on the side of the road, and Sue finds her and actually is there with her in her last moments. And I believe this is when Carrie finds out that Sue didn't know anything about any of that.
Yeah.
I could be remembering it wrong, but I think that she doesn't go home and all the stuff with the house happens.
But I do know, though, that in the book, she does learn that Sue had nothing to do with
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Right before she dies.
All right, so we got some cool little facts here. When Sissy Spacek was preparing for her character, she isolated herself from the rest of the cast, decorated her dressing room with heavy religious items, and while filming the bloody prom sequence for continuity purposes, Spacek refused to wash the effects off, where she instead elected to sleep in her bloody clothes for 3 days of filming.
Wow.
Fucking dedicated. Stephen King was such a newcomer at the time of the film's release, his first name was actually misspelled on the movie's trailer.
Huh.
Yeah. He was a
Weird.
nobody at the time.
It's weird thinking back, like, at that time, nobody really knew who Stephen King was.
Yeah. So Amy Irving, who played Sue Snell, originally read for the part of Princess Leia, and William Catt, who played Tommy Ross, originally read for the part of Luke Skywalker in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Not wild.
I did not get it.
And this one blew my mind. This would have been crazy. So Linda Blair auditioned for the role of Carrie and was in the running, but turned it down fearing being typecast. Can you imagine
Typecast.
Linda Blair being in The Exorcist and Carrie, like 2 legendary horror films?
Yeah, I think Sissy Spacek did a really good job. But man, I can't lie, I would have loved to see a version of this with Linda Blair.
Yeah.
I think it would have been harder to pull off Linda Blair being bullied, and because to me, Linda Blair was just so fucking, like, she grew up to look good. Let's just put it like that. She's very good looking. I think that around this time, she was like heavy on coke and dating Rick James and shit. Weird to think at one point Linda Blair was fucking Rick James and like fucked up on cocaine.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, around this time. So The Exorcist came out in what? The very early 70s.
1973, I think.
Yeah, so I think it's
74?
72 or 74.
Something like that.
And so she was in her early 20s.
Yeah.
So yeah, she would have been probably with Rick James on coke at this point in her life. But yeah, I think it would have been harder to pull off, but I would have loved to see that. I do cherish Linda Blair because of The Exorcist. That'll always hold a special place in my heart. Although every time I see her in interviews, she drives me nuts.
Yeah, with the back.
Talking about how dramatic the fucking filming of that movie was.
Yeah. All right, so ratings and kill count. We got a total kills of 73. We have 62 unnamed people that were killed in the gym fire. Tommy Ross, who was hit in the head with the bucket. The principal, who was electrocuted. Miss Collins, who was crushed by falling debris. Norma, killed by the fire hose. Kenny Garrison, burned to death. Handjob Freddy, burned to death. Chris was blown up in a car. Billy was also burned up in a car. Margaret White, who was stabbed to death by Carrie. And Carrie White, who was crushed to death by the house. All right, so favorite kill.
Oh, fuck. I didn't do a favorite kill. I didn't.
Oh.
Yeah, well, this isn't really a killer movie. Like, most of the kills happen at the end, and they're very quick. So.
Well, I went with Margaret White because the knives flying into her was fucking cool, and her being up there like a crucifix was fucking cool. My second one was Chris because it was a badass big car explosion.
Yeah, I definitely Chris would be up there because of the...
She sucks.
She's the absolute fucking cunt. And then, yeah, her mom being just the way she died and being like crucified. And it was the weird, like, fanatic religious creepiness of her kind of getting off on dying that way and paying for her sins. That actually would be my number one.
All right, so rating. What you got for rating?
Is it my turn to go first?
I think so.
Okay, well, I'll go first. I gave this a 4.5. And it's a great movie. Story of an innocent girl being pushed into becoming a monster at the hands of a overly religious psycho mom and some fucking bullies that take shit to the extreme. A lot of parallels here to Frankenstein for me.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah, with him kinda having good intentions and being pushed into in reality, she turns into a monster at the end. She murders a lot of very innocent people. If you look in the gym, there's very few people laughing at the end. Not a lot of
Yeah.
those people didn't find that funny, but she ended up murdering a lot of people. I love the score. I thought the score was really good. I thought it fit the pace really well. Awesome uses of foreshadowing and metaphors. Acting was great. Thought the cinematography was one thing that really stood out.
Cinematography is amazing.
Yeah, there's a couple shots. The metaphor with the blood, with the red at the end, I thought that was really cool. The foreshadowing with the lightning strikes, with the Last Supper behind her, with her and her mom eating dinner for that last time. Thought the setup shot for that was really cool. And then, of course, the famous shot of Carrie walking through the fire. Everybody knows that. But yeah, overall, this movie's a fucking classic.
Yeah, I also gave it a 4.5. Cinematography was my number one thing that I basically based the rating on. It was a fantastic movie to actually visually watch. The music is good. The acting, there's some really good people in here. Like all the main people were good, but then there was, a lot of, I don't think that the Chris was super great or many of the other girls. They were just very kind of mediocre. But the ones who were good were really good. I will say that. My only issue is I would have liked to have seen Carrie's rampage a lot more than necessarily last like 20 minutes of the movie, especially if they could have done what they did in the book, where she literally walks through a whole entire town, destroys everything constantly. But I get why they couldn't do that. But at the same time, I understand that they're telling a story and they got to make you feel for this character, and they do an amazing job at that. But yeah, my only real knock is just I wish we could have got more, Carrie on this rampage, because that's really what makes it a horror movie.
Yeah, yeah. There's only so much they can do. I get that, but I would have definitely agreed with that. And hopefully with this series that's going to come out, hopefully we get to see more of that. And I think that if there's anybody in the world who could pull it off, they picked the right person to do it. And the fact that it's supposed to be a miniseries, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, so they should have the time
Yeah.
to give us that whole fucking rampage.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, without picking him to do it, I would never want to see this touched. I know when this went off,
The remake
automatically came on while I was finishing my notes, and it was
it's not good.
no part of it that
It wasn't good.
any good at all.
I watched it a few years ago, and I just didn't care for it.
Yeah, but they picked the right person to do it, and hopefully we'll get to see more of the book's rampage.
Yeah.
That happens where she destroys the city. But yeah, man, overall, great movie.
Fantastic.
And one of those movies that's really good. Like I said, teeters on the edge. It's horror. One of those movies that even non-horror fans can really get immersed in and enjoy.
Yeah, it's a movie that almost everybody knows. Like I said, even if you haven't seen it, you probably know at least the ending with the blood and, that's iconic, man. That's literally spawned so much stuff of the prom queen drenched in red. I mean, there's literally a little comment about it at the end of the first Scream where he's like, it's, what they used for pig's blood and Carrie, Yeah. It's just an iconic movie and it's an iconic scene.
And and from a film perspective, it's a great film.
Oh, it's a fantastic film.
When you look at the score and the cinematography and the metaphors and the foreshadowing and everything, like from a film perspective, I could see how somebody like Roger Ebert would enjoy this movie just based off of the film side of it.
So once again, we thank you guys for listening. Please give us a follow or like if you enjoy the show. Check out the website, check out the socials, check out the store, and definitely check out C. Ernst Hearth's Facebook or an Instagram for a chance to win a signed photo. Tell a friend, a family member, or your crazy religious mother about the show, and we hope to see you next time.